Seeing an eruption in the final minutes of trade, I'll break everything down and talk about some levels to look out for in next week's tape. But before we get into that, there is the closing bell, guys, with the S&P's finishing 68 points. We're seeing an eruption in the final minutes of trade. I'm looking across the board. You see the Nasdaq up 1.5%. You see the Russell up 1.74%. You see the Dow up over 400 points. We're seeing just an insane pop in the final 10 minutes of trade. Taking a look at the SPX, we spent most of the week in the green. If it wasn't for Thursday, it would have been a positive week across the board. However, notice this surge in the final minutes of trade. I'll come back and draw these lines in the SPX for next week, but let's take a look at the S&P futures. Taking a look at these futures, just look at this surge in the final minutes of trade. On a daily, we're just about 15 points shy of hitting an all-time high. Volume's a little lagging, however. When we take a look at the Nasdaq, it too has turned it around. We take a look at it on an intraday, and it just went parabolic here in the final minutes of trade. When we take a look at it on the expected move, some levels to look out for next week in the Nasdaq. We'll play 12,264. It's still moving, as these are the futures, with the lower edge playing 12,600 and about 70. These are future contracts, so they're still fluctuating, so call it 13.2, 13.3 as our upper edge for next week's tape. When we take a look at the Russell 2000, just take a look at this thing. We went down 3 standard deviations and we're finishing just shy of the lower edge. So what a turnaround in these small caps we're seeing. And in next week's tape in the Russell, 2277 will play upper edge, 2155 will play our lower edge. So we're seeing a pop in these final minutes of trade. What's going on in our sectors? And taking a look today, the XLK, our technology sector, up 2.5%, leading the bunch in today's trade. We see the XLE about in line, up 2.5%. It too is just surging here. We see healthcare up close to 2%. We see consumer staples putting in a new all-time high. Industrials knocking on the door to all-time highs. And we see software stocks up 1.7%. This was up 0.25% just 5 minutes before the final bell, and now we're up close to 2%. Taking a look at these financials, it too is up 1.6%. It is our worst sector on the day. However, 1.6% isn't too shabby. And we even have our big 5 up 12 basis points. This was red. However, it's positive on the day. Just taking a look across the board, you see the XLK. Tech is leading the way. Energy right behind it. All these sectors are just booming today. However, it's our big 5 that's lagging. However, if these guys turn it around, I would be very concerned if I'm a short right now in this market. So with our equities just erupting in the final 10 minutes of trade, what's going on in those bonds? And taking a look at the bonds today, down 66 basis points. We're seeing them pulling back a bit. So we know when bond price drops, the yield rises. Taking a look at this TNX, it's up a little under 3%. However, notice today with the 10-year yield up 2.85%. Normally, we would see these growth names come down. However, they all surged in the final minutes of trade, and they were up very large in today's tape. Taking a look at the Volatility Index, these VIX futures down 4% and crumbling fast. On an intraday, you can see we hit a nerve. And we just kind of just erupted, quickly coming back down. Volatility is retreating. We take a look at this VVIX. It too got close to 100, just seeing that 100.05 coming up to the 110 line, quickly retreating. The VVIX is sitting at a 102. On a bigger picture here, just taking a look at the VVIX, are we going to break 100? Potentially, we could see it in next week's tape. And if we do, that could give us the green light for new all-time highs across the board. And if technology wants to join the bunch, we could be shooting to levels we never even imagined. So you might be wondering, what's the expected move for next week? Well, we go over to the SPX and we take a look at our trade tab. We're going to look 6 days out because we're not going to have trade due to Good Friday. And they're expecting a $63 move, $63.45. Let me draw these levels in, and I'll explain the levels to look out for in next week's tape. So taking a look at next week's moves, the upper edge will play 4,037. Our lower edge will play 3,911. Judging how we finished today's tape, it would be nice to see this momentum carry over into next week's tape. However, 4,000 should play a psychological level. If we do break that, I think we can just erupt and definitely tag this upper edge at 4,037. However, we have one less trading session, so keep that in mind. We're not going to have trade on Friday. Let's take a look at our dollar index and see what's going on in our commodities. Taking a look at the dollar index, it's down 13 basis points. After seeing 3 days up, the dollar is calming down a bit. As for our commodities, we take a look at crude oil. And today, crude oil's up close to 4%, back over 60. It's been a wild trade. Down, up, down, up, down, up. In crude oil, sitting at 60.82. It definitely helped lift the XLE as it was up 2.5%. As for gold, we take a look at the precious metal. It's up 35 basis points for the most part, sitting at 17.31. This is a boring trade. Nothing going on here. I'll tell you what's not boring, and that is Bitcoin. We take a look at Bitcoin, sitting at 54,300, up close to 4%. Bitcoin is getting a nice bounce. I want to show you some of my charts. We take a look at first Coinbase, and I want to point out, I found a crossover. It's way up here. However, crossovers signal volatile events, and this crossover is coming around the 29th, give or take. This is a 4-hour chart. So over the weekend, let's look to hold this 51.9 level. I think over 50K would be a win in this chart, at least. Taking a look at the Binance chart, a win here would be in between 52, 54, which we're approaching that very, very fast in my Binance chart. As for Bitstamp, we're in between two pitchforks. We could potentially be coming on Monday's session sitting at 57K. We'll see how this trades, but anything over 50,000 by Monday is a win in my book. There you have it for the stock market breakdown. With just 4 trading sessions in next week's tape, the expected move is sitting at about 64 points. Remember, there's no trade due to Good Friday. With bond yields up, tech stocks didn't care today. As we've seen, when yields went up, these growth names have been getting crushed. We'll see if that trend carries over into next week, and if it does, watch out. I also saw Biden's talk about next week he'll be announcing his infrastructure plan. We just had a $1.9 trillion stimulus deal. We're already having another deal on the table, and if that does get in the works, we could potentially be seeing $5 trillion before halfway through this year. I think that's why we saw this pop in the final minutes of trade, with more money printing on its way. Of course, stocks are going to rally. Commodities are going to pop. We're printing more dollars. We're expanding the supply of money. It's devaluing just about everything in dollar terms. But other than that, guys, have a relaxing weekend. If you watch this far, I really appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave one down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. And if you're watching me for the first time, I do these breakdowns daily. Show some love and hit that subscribe button. It'll mean a lot if you guys can show some support and do that. But on that note, guys, I will see you in next week. Have a great night. Take care. Peace!